Richard Archimond was born a mistake. In a world of divine magic. He was a half-blood outcast. Beaten and broken by the very students he was meant to lead. But his enemies made one fatal error. They didn't realize that Richard's mother was an elf goddess. And his father? He's the most terrifying man to ever draw a blade. Hidden in his blood is a power that makes the gods tremble. From a bullied outcast to the only student of a legendary mage. This is how Richard broke the Magic Academy. We begin on the continent of a thorn. A land governed by the Holy Alliance Empire, whose foundation is built upon the faith in the moon goddess, Elucia. With the goddess's blessing, a new continental order has been established. It is a world of beauty and grace, where elegant figures are surrounded by ethereal blue butterflies. Divine arts and magic are woven into the very fabric of the land. But this also means that dark powers, like necromancy, exist in the shadows. In a remote castle under the full moon, the Empire keeps a close watch. The ruling powers have decreed that any non-orthodox abilities must be strictly supervised, sealing them away in forbidden texts. A robed figure declares that these powers must be banned, lest they find their way into the world and corrupt the hearts of the people. The scene shifts to a bright, sun-drenched day. In a lush green forest, the leaves rustle with unseen movement. Something is crashing through the undergrowth. A massive wild boar with sharp tusks bursts out from the bushes. It pants heavily, clearly agitated and on the run. The boar continues its frantic escape through the forest. Suddenly, it's violently yanked off its feet, caught in a hidden trap. The boar lets out a piercing squeal that echoes through the quiet valley. From the shadows of the trees, a figure watches with satisfaction. The prey has taken the bait. The figure is revealed to be a young boy with white hair. He approaches the captured boar, a rope in hand, and says with triumph, "I finally caught you." A close-up shows a determined smile on the boy's face. His name is Richard. But his victory is short-lived. An arrow suddenly thuds into the boar's side, causing Richard to freeze in surprise. A larger, blonde-haired boy holding a bow appears with his friend. With a smirk, he declares, "Hee, the prey is ours." Richard is furious. He glares at the newcomers, shouting, "You stole my prey?" The blonde hunter is Pyru. He claims that everyone there can testify that he was the one who shot the wild boar, so how could it be stealing? The hunter's companion joins the mockery. "Is it just because you set a trap?" he asks, pointing out that they saw Richard earlier with nothing but small traps. The hunter's companion joins the mockery. "Is it just because you set a trap?" he asks, pointing out that they saw Richard earlier with nothing but small traps. Richard retorts with sharp logic, asking, "Is that so? Since you know I'm here to hunt rabbits, then why did you follow me all the way here to shoot a wild boar?" The blonde hunter's face twists in anger. "Your words. Are you saying that we were following you to steal your prey?" His companion waves a dismissive hand. "Stop wasting words on him. Pyru is the one who took down this wild boar." Richard refuses to back down, lunging forward and shouting, "You are going too far. This prey was caught by my trap." The taunt hits a sore spot, and Richard freezes in shock and anger as the bully grabs him and shouts, "That's why your dad left for the milk." The other hunter grabs Richard, throwing him to the ground. "Don't think you're so great just because you've read a few books, can write a few words, and can set a few animal traps." As he holds Richard down, he declares, "Fist is the only truth." Pyru glares down at him with contempt, his face a mask of rage as he asks, "Do you dare to resist?" Pinned to the forest floor, Richard glares back with unwavering defiance, gritting his teeth. "The prey is clearly mine." Enraged by the boy's stubbornness, the hunter kicks him hard. "Still talking back? What is that look in your eyes?" He sends Richard flying with another kick, screaming, "You fatherless bum." The bully stands over the fallen boy, demanding, "I'm asking you one more time. Do you submit?" But even as he struggles to get up, bruised and beaten, Richard's spirit is unbroken. This prey. It's mine. At the end of his patience, Pyru gives a final, chilling order to his companions. Hit him for me. I'll take responsibility if he dies. Later that night, under the pale light of the full moon, a battered Richard finally makes his way home, wincing in pain. Inside, his mother sees his bruised and swollen face and asks with concern what happened. Richard tries to brush it off, claiming he just got hurt while catching the wild boar. His mother gently tends to his wounds. She reminds him that while she asked him to hunt for his birthday feast, he mustn't push himself so hard. As she cleans a cut, a soft green light begins to glow from her hand. She tells him to hold still as she uses her healing divine art. The green energy envelopes her hands as she soothes his injuries, telling him to just endure it for a little while. She warns him not to push himself so hard again and to be more careful. But Richard, full of youthful pride, insists he's not a child anymore. He's 10 years old now and can take care of things at home. In an instant, the wound on his cheek is completely healed. He smiles brightly, flexing to show he's all right. His mother watches him with a fond smile, noting that he's loved to show off his strength ever since he was small. Her expression becomes more serious as she reflects on how quickly time flies. Her little Richard is already 10 years old. She decides that the time has come to finally tell him a long-held secret. The secret of a special ritual. She turns to her son and asks, "Richard, you've always hoped to be able to use divine arts like your mother, haven't you? Today, I can teach you." Stunned by the sudden offer, Richard's eyes widen. After the humiliation he just endured, the idea of learning divine arts feels like a dream. "Ah, really?" he asks, his voice trembling with a mix of disbelief and burgeoning hope. His mother gives him a knowing smile as her magic playfully makes a teapot float. "Of course. How could your mother lie to you?" she confirms, officially offering him the power he desires as his 10th birthday present. Richard is ecstatic. He pumps his fists and shouts, "Great! I want to learn." His expression hardens as the memory of his bullies surfaces. He thinks to himself, that way, I won't be so easily bullied anymore. But his mother tempers his excitement. "Don't be so happy yet, Richard. Learning divine arts is not a simple matter." She explains that on the continent of a thorn, not everyone can use divine arts, as the church strictly controls their inheritance. The purpose of this control, she says while picturing a grand cathedral, is to maintain order. It is to list non-orthodox powers like shadows and demons as taboos, to prevent these evil forces from endangering the world. That, she explains, is why she hasn't taught him. She didn't want to put him at risk. But there is another reason, a prerequisite for using divine arts. The prerequisite, she states, is to learn the ancient language, to become a person recognized by the goddess Alicia. Richard looks puzzled, repeating her words, "the ancient language." His mother elaborates that one cannot understand divine arts immediately. A barrier exists to prevent evil powers from claiming them. She shows him a phrase in the ancient script, translating it as, "Power is granted to the truly strong," promising that as his birthday gift, she will teach him everything. But before she can continue, Richard speaks the second half of the phrase in the ancient tongue himself, saying, "A truly strong person must also have wisdom." His mother looks up, completely stunned. She stares at him in disbelief, stammering, "Richard, how could you?" His mother urgently asks, "Who taught you this ancient language?" He simply replies, "It was written in a book." Taking a lit candle, his mother leads the way into the dark recesses of their home. There, in the dusty attic, Richard points up to a book lying in a mysterious, glowing blue circle on the floorboards. "This book in the attic," he says, confirming that he actually understood it. His mother looks on, a slow smile spreading across her face. She muses that it must be destiny, as he'd read every other book at home already. This book was originally the gift she had prepared for his special 10th birthday ritual. Richard looks at the book, puzzled, and asks, "A gift?" He seems underwhelmed, thinking it's just another book. But his mother kneels by the glowing scripture and tells him its true name. "Richard, this book is the holy scripture of the moon goddess Alicia. It records 7 unique divine art stories belonging to the moon goddess. And the ancient language you just spoke came directly from this book." Richard thoughtfully explains that while he had read the other books in the attic long ago, it was only recently that he could begin to understand the contents of this one. His mother explains that the text is not something everyone has the ability to understand. Only those recognized by the goddess have the qualification to comprehend and use it. She admits that even she hadn't expected this. She looks at her son with newfound awe and declares, "You have been chosen by Alicia. Richard. Since the goddess has already recognized you," she says with newfound gravity, "then tonight will be the night you complete this special ritual." His mother tells him, "Kneel and pray," while she uses her divine arts to begin the ritual. His mother tells him, "You will enter the hall of the goddess Alicia to receive enlightenment concerning destiny." A brilliant golden light envelopes Richard, pulling him into the ritual. His mother watches him go, whispering a final piece of guidance. "Go, Richard. Listen carefully, my child." As he fades into the light, she warns him, "You will very likely encounter 2 or 3 choices next." Her voice echoes as he disappears, "Pay attention to the voice of the goddess, and follow your heart." Richard materializes in a vast, ethereal space, a celestial hall filled with glowing blue energy and massive, crystalline structures. This. Where is this? He wonders. He stands alone, a tiny figure in an immense, shimmering chamber. Suddenly, a powerful voice echoes through the hall, asking, "Do you want more power?" Startled, Richard looks around, demanding, "Whose voice?" The voice answers cryptically from the heart of the great hall, "Who I am is not important." It continues, "Perhaps you can understand me as the other half hidden deep within your heart." Richard is shocked by this revelation. All around him, colossal golden statues begin to rumble and glow, awakening from their slumber. The voice announces, "The idols of power have all awakened." The 6 towering idols loom over him as the voice commands him to begin your choice. Richard looks on with wide-eyed determination, realizing, This is what Mother mentioned. The first choice materializes before him, the divine arts idol of enlightenment. Then, 2 more idols are presented, the divine arts idol of cure, or healing, and the divine arts idol of sanction, or punishment. They are followed by the divine arts idol of silver moon armament, and the divine arts idol of judgment. The final choice appears, the divine arts idol of foresight, also known as precognition. Richard is bewildered. Didn't she say there would be 2 or 3 choices? Why are there 6, he wonders, as the booming voice commands him to choose. He struggles with the decision, unsure of what these 6 divine arts truly represent and which one he needs most. In that moment of indecision, his mind flashes back to the brutal, humiliating beating he endured in the forest. He remembers the pain, the powerlessness, and the burning shame. The memory hardens his resolve into a single, desperate thought, "I want to become stronger." He thinks of his mother's gentle, healing hands and her worried face. To be capable of protecting Mother. His desire culminates in a powerful vow, and grow up to be a true man. As he makes his declaration, the Holy Scripture flares open before him. Finally he flashes back to his mother reminding him to follow the choice of his heart. With glowing eyes full of clarity and conviction, Richard makes his choice. "I understand," he declares, then screams out his decision, "I want wisdom." He shouts with all his might, his voice echoing in the celestial hall, "The wisdom to become a true man." The mysterious voice responds, "Understood. Following your choice of wisdom, the divine edict will point to a 7th idol, one that is outside the 6 idols. yet at their intersection. Beams of light erupt from the 6 statues, converging on the center of the platform. The voice proclaims, the 7th idol. From the vortex of power, a new, massive idol, dark and winged, begins to materialize as the voice announces the name of his newfound, divine art. The shadowy, winged statue fully appears, and his unique power is revealed, Dark Side of the Moon. An ancient, ominous message appears in glowing red script. The balance of the world dictates that every gain has a price. The script continues with a chilling question for Richard and his newfound power. Then, for gaining an unexpected ability, what price will you have to pay? Back in the attic, the ritual concludes. Richard remains kneeling, his head bowed, as his mother looks on with a worried expression. Suddenly, the calm is broken as a dark, smoky energy erupts from the ritual circle, filling the room. His mother's eyes widen in alarm as she sees the ominous power. "Richard!" she whispers, a bead of sweat running down her face. She reaches out for him, but a shadowy mist rises from his body. He lets out a pained, guttural growl as the dark energy consumes him. She recoils, her face a mask of shock and fear at this unexpected and terrifying outcome. From the swirling darkness enveloping her son, a monstrous creature made of shadow begins to form, its sharp claws and menacing shape leaving his mother utterly horrified. In a mysterious space, a single eye reflects a glowing moon. Below, Richard floats in a swirling abyss of blue energy, drawn towards the light. The boy, Richard, floats helplessly in the strange, linear dimension. A voice echoes his name, Richard, startling him. The voice who is revealed to be Richard's mother, Elaine, who urgently calls out, "My child," as she is struck by possessed Richard. Suddenly, Elaine is struck and sent onto the attic floor. She lands hard on the solid floor, catching her breath and wondering, how could this happen? To think it would be the shadowy possessed Richard that attacked her stands over her. As Elaine finishes her sentence of this incident happening during the enlightenment of Alicia. Elaine recalls an old adage, a truly powerful person must also possess wisdom. She questions whether this strange and violent experience is truly the enlightenment of Alicia. But rather than ponder, she leaps into action, charging at Richard with a determined look and a bleeding hand. Elaine effortlessly blocks his attack with a shimmering green aura of magic. The two are locked in a fierce struggle, their powers clashing in a whirlwind of green and white energy. Elaine begins to channel her energy, initiating a powerful ability, Divine Technique Prediction. With a determined expression, she unleashes the technique from a glowing book, shouting the command, "Initiate." Richard is plunged into a chaotic void. A dark, broken moon hangs in the abyss, surrounded by terrifying shadow creatures that swirl around him. A glowing, spectral form of his mother appears, observing the scene and noting, truly a shadow creature. Richard is seen falling through the darkness once more as his name is called out again. Elaine cries out in agony as she returns to consciousness, clutching her head. "Ugh! My head hurts so much." The ordeal appears to finally be over. Richard is on his knees, exhausted, while Elaine sits in a nearby chair. The blue wisps of energy from the ritual dissipate around them. Elaine begins to explain the meaning of the harrowing experience. There can be no mistake. Those chaotic creatures have already reached the domain of the moon goddess. She continues, describing the vast world of magic, between planes, with their own world being just one of many. And between these planes, there are countless shadow races wandering. This evil force is constantly trying to corrupt every plane it can reach. Unfortunately, its dark power has already found its way to the Ethan continent. They use the chaotic energy of living beings as natural nourishment. Magic power is one of the most delicious foods in their eyes. Elaine explains their methods. Through seductive means, they twist the minds of magic users, turning believers of divine techniques into their puppets. These fallen become spokespersons for the chaotic dark power, spreading corruption and harming more lives. She recounts a past tragedy where this led to the failure of the great priest and the warriors. Blood stained the earth, and an entire civilization came to an end. It was only until the birth of a new era, through the joint efforts of the Holy Alliance and the Moon Goddess, that they were able to drive back the invading shadow creatures. Finishing her history lesson, Elaine laments, "I just never thought, many years later today, Elucia would also be contaminated." Now, Richard has probably been locked onto by those terrifying shadow lives as one of the coordinates and anchors for their next invasion here. He has become a lighthouse, a beacon in the dark, attracting a swarm of grotesque shadow creatures. Elaine continues grimly, "If things continue like this, only two possible outcomes remain for Richard. The first fate, to be utterly destroyed by a violent energy conflict. Or be possessed by the most powerful shadow creature, permanently losing control of his body." Elaine gazes out the window at the full moon, her heart heavy with despair. Is this Elucia's punishment, she wonders. She sighs, lamenting her lost power. If I were still the great priest of Elucia, the enlightenment wouldn't have mutated. She thinks, her expression filled with regret. No, she resolves, her determination hardening. I cannot let this happen. It's all because I didn't think things through enough that Richard was put in danger. Filled with a new sense of urgency, she begins to frantically search the room. Where is it? She finally finds what she's looking for in a desk drawer, an old scroll tied with a ribbon and a golden quill. She holds the ancient parchment, her eyes filled with a mix of hope and sorrow. Although 10 years have passed, Elaine prepares for another ritual, her magical energy swirling as she holds the glowing quill to the ancient scroll. She recalls her former strength. The person who was able to destroy the elf royal court back then, should be able to deal with shadow life. As golden energy bursts forth, she begins the chant, invoking a powerful name, Isaiah Satan Talia Akmand. The ritual culminates in a blinding explosion of golden light. Elaine explains the meaning of the spell. The burning light symbolizes that this name, written with magic power, has touched the law, transmitting it to the owner of the name. For them to perceive. Elaine watches, her eyes open and aware, absorbing the powerful magic. The scene shifts, taking us back in time. 11 years ago. In a dark, rocky cavern, a man with dark hair tells a younger Elaine that she must survive. We don't have much time left, he says urgently. Leave the pursuers to me. The younger Elaine, her pointed elf ears clearly visible, cries out, I can't let you go alone. He embraces her tightly, interrupting her protest. Elaine. There's no time. Take good care of our child. With tears in her eyes, Elaine listens to Godin's declaration about their son's destiny. He is the future of the Akmand family, a man with the bloodline of a demon. I confer this surname upon him. In their final embrace, Godin entrusts her with his legacy and a promise for the future. I hope that one day, you can tell him, my name as his father, Godin Isaiah Satan Toria Akmand. In the final moment of the flashback, Godin unleashes his power, and trusting Elaine with his last wish, raise him into a true man. Back in the present, Elaine is surrounded by golden light. She speaks to her lost love, Godin, I have lived in seclusion with our child here for 10 years. I didn't expect you and our child to meet in this way. Her own elf ears now visible, she extends a hand glowing with power and calls out to the memory of her husband, he needs you. Invoking her past authority, she unleashes her full power, in the name of the great priest, Begond. A powerful beam of light erupts, enveloping Richard. The divine magic shines like a beacon from their home, piercing the darkness of the night. After the intense ritual, a calm settles. Richard stirs, and his mother holds him gently, relieved. You're awake. My head hurts so much. What happened? Richard asks, disoriented. I remember I saw the full moon and then. Elaine soothes him, it's all right now, Richard. As his senses return, Richard notices something startling about his mother's appearance. Ah! Mom, you. Elaine smiles gently, revealing her long, pointed elf ears. No need to be surprised, she says softly, this is what Mom originally looks like. Richard tries to piece together his memories. Just like that, I chose wisdom. Then the seventh goddess statue appeared. After that, my impression became more and more vague. But I vaguely still remember. I was taken to another space. The feeling there was completely different from before. He describes the strange, ethereal plane, oppressive. Dead silence. In that space, he sat before a massive moon that left him with a single, cryptic sentence. He explains, just like the front and back of the moon. I obtained wisdom and the truth behind the wisdom. Puzzled, Elaine asks, truth? Richard adds, I have never heard of an ability like truth existing in the Enlightenment. Although my consciousness was a bit blurry at the time. I remember this sentence very clearly. Elaine listens intently, her expression turning serious as she considers the implications of this new, unheard-of power. Truth. Could it be? A flicker of understanding, or perhaps deeper concern, flashes in her eyes. Richard confirms the change within him. This time I have gained a clearer ability to understand the world. I can feel, my body has improved. I can see the scenery outside the window further, and hear movements, more clearly. Elaine looks down, her thoughts drifting back to Godin's last words about their son's demonic bloodline and his destiny as part of the Ackman family. She turns back to Richard, trying to calm his mind. All right, Richard, you don't need to think so much right now. It's enough that you are back safely. But there is something Mom needs to tell you, she says, capturing his attention. Richard, you are already 10 years old. I think you have the right to know. Thinking she's referring to his birthday, Richard smiles playfully. Did Mom prepare any birthday presents too? Elaine's expression turns grave as she delivers the unexpected topic, it's your father. The word hangs in the air, stunning Richard, who had always believed his father was long gone. Looking down at her shocked son, her voice heavy with the weight of a decade-old secret, she asks the profound question, Richard. Do you want to see him? Struggling to process the revelation, Richard stammers, my father, isn't he? Elaine gently confirms the truth he never knew. I'm sorry, Richard, for hiding it from you for so long. Your father has not passed away. Tears of sorrow and regret fill her eyes. Please forgive your mother. Because too many things happened in between, so we had no choice but to. As long as you are willing, I think you will see him very soon. The person he sent should arrive soon. Richard looks at his mother, his own emotions swirling. He turns her question back on her. Mother, you. Do you want to see father? He stands before her, no longer a confused boy, but a young man with a purpose says, as long as Mom wants to see him. With fierce determination burning in his eyes, he makes a vow. Then I also want to see Dad. Overcome with emotion, Elaine looks at her son, her heart swelling with love and pride. A tearful smile graces her lips. She pulls him into a warm, tight embrace, her voice thick with emotion. Thank you, my child. The moment mirrors a memory from long ago, a fleeting image of her and Godin embracing in a time before sorrow and separation. But even in this happy reunion of purpose, a dark thought pervades her mind. But perhaps, just like Godin back then, the time left for me to protect you is running out. A few days later. The scene changes to their peaceful village, bathed in the warm light of a sunny afternoon, where farmers quietly tend to their crops. Suddenly, the thundering sound of hoofbeats shatters the tranquility. A villager stops his work, looking up from the fields in alarm. Wiping sweat from his brow, he turns to his companion with a concerned look. Who entered the village? His eyes widen in sheer terror at the approaching sight. Those are heavy cavalry. An entire troop of armored soldiers storms into the small, peaceful village, a sight that strikes fear into the hearts of the farmers. An imposing man, the leader of the cavalry, glares down from his steed. "Hey! Answer me," he commands. The terrified villager can only stammer, "Why, yes." Unsheathing his sword, its sharp blade glints ominously in the sunlight. The cavalry leader, a stern man named Modred with a scar across his face, points his sword at the helpless farmer and makes his chilling demand, "Who knows where Elaine lives?" In a rural village, a man is violently thrown into a wheat field by the newly arrived cavalry. The blonde farmer is interrogated by the knights. They're looking for someone named Elaine, but the man, terrified, insists he doesn't know anyone by that name. Other villagers echo his denial. They've never heard of an Elaine and claim that in their small village, no one with that name exists. The captain of the knights, Modred, is unconvinced. One of his men reports that the directive definitely pointed to this village, stating that the directive cannot be wrong. Modred stirs and ponders on the situation. He decides on a course of action. His horse rears up, casting a terrifying shadow over the helpless villagers. Modred declares that if they won't talk, his knights will simply have to turn the entire place upside down. He commands his men to begin a thorough search. But as the knights are about to advance, a voice cries out from a distance, telling them to stop. A mysterious woman in a white hood emerges from near a house, calmly stating, "I am here." The villagers are stunned. They recognize the woman as Ellen and wonder with dread why the knights are after her. One of the knights, not understanding the situation, orders Ellen to halt and not take another step. However, another hand reaches out and stops the knight's arm. It's Captain Modred, who scolds his subordinate, telling him not to be rude. The scene briefly transitions to a peaceful view of the village and Ellen's house as a horse gallops up to her. In a shocking turn of events, Modred dismounts and kneels before Ellen. He introduces himself as a knight of Lord Godin, here by his lordship's command. With his head bowed, Modred declares that they have come to escort the madam back. Hearing the commotion, the other villagers start running towards the scene to find out what is happening. A villager boy, Pyru, rushes forward. The crowd buzzes with gossip, questioning if Ellen committed a crime and speculating that her name might not even be Ellen. Pyru pushes through the crowd, shouting for everyone to look closely at Ellen's appearance. His eye widens in sheer disbelief and shock as they realize the truth. The secret is out. As Ellen pulls back her hood, revealing her long, pointed ears, the crowd realizes the truth. She is an elf. And beside her stands her young, white-haired son, Richard. Ellen, whose real name is Elaine, turns to her son, Richard. She tells him that the person he most wishes to greet is not her, and introduces him to Knight Modred. Modred bows his head deeply, not to Elaine, but to the young boy, Richard. He expresses his pleasure in meeting him and pledges his service. The villagers are utterly stunned by this development. They can't believe that not only is Ellen an elf, but the powerful knights are bowing to her son, Richard. They are left to wonder about their true, and clearly noble, identities. Among the stunned crowd, Pyru is left speechless, his understanding of his quiet neighbors completely shattered by the impossible scene unfolding before him. With the truth revealed, Modred announces it is time to depart, stating that Lord Godin eagerly awaits their arrival. Setting the journey into motion, Elaine confirms that she is ready to leave. Young Richard, looking worried, calls out to his mother. Elaine reassures him, holding his hand and telling him it's all right. She promises him that the knights won't hurt him, her expression a mixture of love and somber resolution. With a sad smile and a tear escaping her eye, she reminds him of their promise, to go and see his father. The moment is bittersweet, a symbolic letting go. A single drop falls from their hands as they part, signifying a final, tragic farewell. Meanwhile, the knights establish a perimeter around the area, shouting orders for everyone to step back and prohibiting anyone from leaving the village. Captain Modred announces that this lockdown will remain in effect until his troops have departed from the area. Modred watches as the procession begins to move, his face stern and unreadable. Richard is placed on a horse with a knight and they begin to ride away from the village. In his thoughts, Modred confirms the boy's identity: this kid is the son of Lord Godin. As he looks upon the boy, Modred's internal monologue finishes the thought: Richard is the heir to the Archmond family bloodline. But as they are leaving, a knight frantically rides up, shouting to Captain Modred that something is wrong. The knight reports that Madame Elaine has vanished. Richard and Modred both turn back in shock. The knights are confused. She was supposed to be in the carriage. One explains that she claimed to have forgotten something and went back, but the soldier following her lost her in a sudden gust of wind. The panic escalates as another soldier arrives with terrible news: the village is on fire. From the back of the procession, the villagers cry out in terror, pointing to the source of the blaze: it's Ellen's house. The final, horrifying report comes from the rear guard. Madame Elaine returned to her home, and immolated herself. Richard and the knights look back towards the plume of smoke in absolute horror. The word "no" escapes Richard's lips as his mind struggles to process the catastrophic news. Pure instinct takes over. Screaming in denial, Richard throws himself from the horse and tries to run back towards the fire, but he is quickly intercepted by the knights. He's thrown to the ground as they struggle to restrain the grief-stricken boy. Richard fights against them with all his might, screaming for them to let him go. He cries out that his mother didn't say it would be this way. Tears streaming down his face, he continues to struggle against Captain Modred, desperately pleading for them to release him. Modred holds the boy fast, his face grim. He yells at Richard to calm down, declaring that this tragic end was Madame's own choice. As the fire rages, Modred's narration describes her sacrifice as an act that was pure and brave. A silhouette of Elaine stands defiantly in the flames, willing to burn her own life to ash to protect the things she cherished. Modred calls her a woman truly worthy of Lord Godin. As Richard weeps, reaching for the fire, the captain tells him not to disappoint her expectations and everything she has done for him. The scene flashes back to a quiet night under a full moon. Elaine tells a younger Richard that they will soon be leaving the village where he was born. Richard asks her why she waited until after his 10th birthday to tell him the truth about his father being alive. The flashback continues. Stroking his hair, Elaine tells Richard there was no other way. She confesses that due to her own negligence, something terrible happened to her, and the only solution left is to ask for his father's help. When Richard asks how she met his father, Elaine looks out the window, explaining that their story is too complicated to tell. She reveals that because of powerful forces and complex issues, she was forced to take him into hiding under assumed names. She explains that it wasn't until a recent ritual that she was forced to revert to her original elven appearance. As Richard admits his own shock at the revelation, Elaine grows somber, stating that she has little magic left and her illness will only get worse. Richard's eyes widen in alarm as he processes her words. "Mom, are you sick?" he asks, his voice filled with fear. Elaine confirms his fears, her expression grim. She says that this illness cannot be overcome. Then she delivers the ominous truth: one party must make a sacrifice. She looks at him sadly, telling him that after taking him to his father, she will need to leave him for a while in order to cure the illness. Richard immediately protests, crying out that he wants to go with her. But Elaine gently tells him not to be willful, reminding him that this is all for his sake and that he should be obedient if he wants her to get well quickly. Devastated, Richard can only stammer, "But I..." Elaine looks at her son, her gaze full of love and resolve, as she prepares to give him her final words of comfort. "Remember, Richard," she says, pulling him into a final embrace. "No matter where you go, Mom will be by your side." The flashback ends, and the scene returns to the brutal present. Richard lies unconscious in the back of a hay cart, having been knocked out by Modred's men to silence his frantic cries. Modred orders the carriage to depart first, instructing his knights to protect Richard at all costs. One of the knights questions the appropriateness of knocking out Lord Godin's child, but Modred coldly replies there was no better way. The knight then asks for orders regarding the village. Modred issues a chilling command: a small group of the women are to be allowed to escape to spread the news that the madam is dead. The knight then asks about the fate of the remaining villagers. His face darkens as he explains the grim reality of their situation. Modred states that Lord Godin does not want anyone else knowing the child's whereabouts. The implication is clear and brutal. With the village burning behind them, Modred's soldiers give the final, horrific order: seal the village. Kill them all. The knights carry out the command without hesitation. The once peaceful village becomes a scene of slaughter as the remaining villagers, including the other boy Pyru, are mercilessly cut down. As the massacre unfolds, the scene transitions back to Elaine's voice from the flashback. Richard had asked her, "Mom, what kind of person is father?" Her answer was simple and terrifying: a madman. She revealed his terrifying past. 10 years ago, Richard's father, Romeo Archimond, single-handedly annihilated the elven royal court in the Evernight Forest. His actions were so devastating that they shook the entire Holy Alliance. Despite this, Elaine admitted that she hadn't had any news of him for many years. However, she had heard that he has since become a Marquis, and now resides in a place named the Black Rose Castle, which looms ominously in the distance. Sometime later, Richard groans, waking from his forced slumber. The trauma of the day's events has taken its toll. His eyes snap open, the last word he remembers crying out is "Mother." Richard sits up, dazed and confused. He finds himself in a luxurious, unfamiliar room with a warm fire crackling in a large fireplace. He clutches his head, trying to piece together the fragmented memories. He only recalls being pinned to the ground by one of the knights, and then, nothing. Then, the full, horrifying memory comes rushing back: the fire, his mother's sacrifice. His eyes widen in panic and grief. In a frantic surge of adrenaline, he leaps out of bed, shouting for his mother. He has to find her. But as he stumbles into the room, a sudden knock at the door stops him in his tracks. Startled and on edge, he calls out, "Who is it?" Slowly, the large, ornate door creaks open. A young maid with long, light brown hair appears. She sees Richard and calmly says, "It seems you are awake." She informs him that she has put his clothes out and that he should bathe and change. Richard is flustered, suddenly aware that he's only in his shorts and feeling completely out of place. He panics, asking why she has his old clothes. The maid simply directs his attention to a new set of clothes, points him toward the bathing area, and ignores his outburst. She tells him to wash up properly, her tone professional and distant. "His lordship is waiting to see you," she adds before turning to leave. Richard repeats her words, "His lordship." The reality of his situation, and who he is about to meet, begins to sink in. After bathing, he gets dressed in the unfamiliar, high-quality clothes laid out for him. Now dressed as a young nobleman, Richard looks a world away from the village boy he was just hours ago. He looks around the massive room and can only think, this place is really big. The camera focuses on a golden candelabra, a symbol of the immense wealth and power that now surrounds him. He walks nervously through the grand, intimidating halls of what he now knows is the Black Rose Castle. With a deep breath and a determined, albeit nervous expression, he heads toward the main hall to meet his fate. He arrives at the bottom of a grand staircase. From the darkened landing above, a calm, commanding voice rings out, "We finally meet." He arrives at the bottom of a grand staircase. From the darkened landing above, a calm, commanding voice rings out, "We finally meet." The man steps out of the shadows, revealing an imposing figure with striking black and white hair and a red rose on his lapel. It is his father, Marquis Romeo Archimond. He looks down and addresses the boy by his full, noble name, Richard Archimond. My bloodline. The scene opens on a lavishly lit dining hall, viewed from the quiet darkness outside a large window. Inside, someone is having a meal, their hands elegantly cutting a piece of meat on a porcelain plate. A young boy with white hair, Richard, strangely eats a piece of food that is literally on fire. A voice from across the table remarks that while life has its hardships, one should always have a passion for good food and drink, something Richard's mother, Elaine, often said. The voice adds that Richard's personality is very similar to his mother's. At the mention of his mother, Richard's expression darkens, a flicker of turmoil in his eyes as he chews the food. The speaker is revealed to be Lord Goton, a man with striking black and white hair. He tells Richard that Elaine made a great sacrifice for both of them, protecting Richard and preserving Goton's own identity. He then addresses the boy by his full name, Richard Archimond. Richard, angered, slams his hand on the table and shouts that his name is Richard, rejecting the surname Goton used. Goton calmly retorts that whether Richard admits it or not, Elaine never gave him the name Moonsong. Therefore, his surname remains Archimond. He continues, explaining that in the end, Elaine entrusted Richard to his care. Regardless of what she told him about his origins, the blood of the Archimond family flows through his veins. Goton elaborates that this bloodline is of the Archimond nobility, which exists under the current Holy Alliance Empire. He recounts their history. The Archimond family should have a Grand Duke rank, but due to their madness, they were destroyed by other noble families, becoming a thorn in their side, a lower-class family that doesn't follow etiquette or rules. Changing the subject, Goton mentions that in the eyes of those old noble families, there is a great figure who enjoys eating raw flesh, as he begins to slice a piece of uncooked meat. A close-up shows the knife slicing into the blood-red, raw meat. Goton reveals that this person demands flesh be carved from a living body and consumed within an hour. He is known as Philip the Bloodthirsty. Richard looks on in horror as a menacing, crowned silhouette flashes on screen. Goton holds a red rose, his expression sinister, as he continues his dark tale about this man. He explains that a man like that is somehow publicly recognized by the Empire as the epitome of a true nobleman, and he asks Richard if he knows the reason why. With a chilling smirk, blood dripping from his mouth as if he'd taken a bite of the raw meat, Goton begins the shocking revelation. Because that, Philip the Bloodthirsty, is none other than His Majesty, the greatest emperor of the Holy Alliance Empire. He commands the Empire's forces, and yet the old noble families all fawn over him. Richard is completely stunned, unable to process the fact that the cruel emperor, who rules their empire, is this monstrous figure. And because of this, Goton explains, the Archimond family, their family, have become the mad and dangerous outsiders that everyone speaks of. Goton states that since Richard has inherited the Archimond surname, he too must unfortunately become strong and powerful. He finally realizes that this is the reason his father and mother were willing to make sacrifices, to resist this oppressive rule. Richard quietly asks if the goal is to resist. Goton scoffs at the notion. No, he declares. He simply refuses to submit to the feeling of being controlled by that kind of trash. He then looks down upon the boy, telling him that at only 10 years old, he thinks of the world in far too simple terms. Goton delivers a chilling warning: when Richard truly understands the truth, he might discover that the person closest to him is no different from the bloodthirsty emperor. Their intense conversation is interrupted by an aide, who apologizes and reports that spies from other noble families have been captured in their territory, an organized group of over 100 commoners. Without a moment's hesitation, Lord Goton gives a chilling order: dispose of them all, regardless of their status. Richard looks on, shocked by the casual display of brutality. Leave no one alive, Goton finishes. After his aide confirms the order, he turns his attention to a woman with long blonde hair standing nearby. Gotan informs the woman that, as Richard's older sister, his life in the castle is now her responsibility. She solemnly accepts. Richard, in shock of realizing he has a half-sister, suddenly stands, desperately asking Gotan what his mother truly meant to him. Gotan pauses, his expression unreadable and cast in shadow. He delivers a heartless blow, stating flatly, "Now, Elaine means nothing." Richard is visibly crushed by the cold dismissal of his mother. Gotan continues that Elaine's final request was to entrust Richard to his care, as she placed her hopes in him. However, Gotan coldly states he has no interest in fulfilling her wishes, warning it won't be easy. Richard trembles with suppressed rage as Gotan tells him that even though he is in his care, he will not be helped directly, nor will he be granted power. As he walks away, Gotan tells Richard that to escape his predicament, he can only rely on himself to seize the opportunities that will be provided. The scene shifts to a memory. Richard once asked his mother if, after so many years, she still loved his father. She replied that she did, and hoped that Richard would be able to like him too when they finally met. The memory fuels his present anger. No, he thinks, his face twisted in a furious scowl. His inner voice screams with conviction, "I hate him." A horse's hooves pound against the rocky, snow-dusted ground, signaling the start of a journey. Gotan's aide, a man with a prominent scar across his face, leads the way through the mountains, announcing that they are almost at their destination. 2 days later, they arrive at a breathtaking, glowing citadel. The aide informs young Master Richard that this is the Magic Tower City, Deep Blue, the training ground Lord Gotan has arranged for him. As they approach a tower, the aide informs Richard that his new mentor is inside. The tower glows with an intense blue light, surrounded by swirling magical energy and symbols. Richard is completely awestruck, letting out a "wow" as he takes in the full view of the legendary city of magic floating in the sky. He marvels at the buildings, which seem to be crafted from gleaming, crystalline structures. He sees all kinds of magic users, dressed in robes and pointed hats, walking the streets of the enchanted city. His eyes sparkle with pure childish wonder. He thinks to himself, "I've really only ever seen this in Mom's books." As he's lost in awe, Gotan calls out to a crystal for old time's sake, he is to diligently instruct the young master. The figure, Richard's new mentor, turns around. He scoffs at the mention of old-time sake and immediately complains that a Marquis still owes him for a lot of materials. Gotan retorts that the principal has been paid, but they refuse to acknowledge the exorbitant interest he's demanding. Gotan cuts him off, telling him to stop the nonsense. He insists the mentor should be well aware of the identity and background of his new student. More importantly, he adds, young Master Richard possesses extraordinary magical talent. But the mentor is unmoved. He refuses to work for free, boasting about how many magical geniuses he has to turn down every year. He then declares that before anything else, he demands to inspect the goods. Richard can only look on, wondering what it means to be inspected. The scene opens by establishing a core rule of its magical world: magic is not a skill that can be learned by just anyone. It is an exclusive gift. Only those born with special constitutions or into specific bloodlines have a chance to wield it. To identify these individuals, a place called the Spring of Assessment was created within the Deep Blue Tower City to screen and grade their potential. An assessor with white hair and a large blue hat announces that everyone should line up and await their assessment results. A man screams in agony as he undergoes the trial. The results for the 76th tester are announced: white, entry level. A group of female assessors gossip amongst themselves, wondering which rich young master is attempting to learn magic this time. They note with disappointment that the testers so far haven't been impressive, with no one even reaching an intermediate level. Meanwhile, Madrid, a knight in a red hood, speaks to a nervous young boy named Richard. He reassures him that it will be his turn soon and tells him not to be nervous, but to endure the process. An announcement is made: the 77th tester is about to begin. As Richard walks forward, the crowd begins to jeer. They mock his simple, farmer-like outfit and his young age, laughing at the sight of a child participating. Standing in the center of the vast spring of assessment, Richard is instructed to remain and accept the trial of the spring water. As the magic surges around him, Richard grits his teeth in pain, exclaiming that the magic is impacting his body and it hurts. Watching from the sidelines, Modred and other retainers shout for their young master to hold on, revealing their allegiance and determination not to let down Lord Goto. A memory of Lord Goton flashes in Richard's mind, his words echoing, "Go fight for those opportunities one gave you." Fueled by this memory, Richard's expression hardens with determination. He refuses to let Lord Goton look down on him. The assessors look on in complete shock. One points out that the kid has held on for over 10 minutes, calling it amazing. The blonde female assessor, holding a glowing golden orb, announces that the grading results are in. A massive surge of golden energy erupts from the spring. The result is declared, Gold, Advanced Level. But amidst the golden light, a close-up on Richard's eye reveals something is wrong. A hint of red shows a sinister transformation is beginning. The scene is overlaid by a blood-red moon hanging over the academy, signaling a dark turn of events. Richard lets out a horrifying scream as the golden energy becomes corrupted, and dark, shadowy power begins to mix with it. The system flashes a warning: an unidentified anomaly has been detected. Danger! The onlookers and assessors are thrown into a panic, questioning the black energy and the type of magic Richard is using, something none of them have ever seen before. Modred stares in shock and realization. He identifies the dark power manifesting before him, a shadow creature. A thought flashes through Modred's mind, recalling the past worries of the Madam. In a flashback, Modred is seen speaking to Elaine, Richard's mother. She explains that it is for this reason that he must contact Lord Goton for help, despite knowing it will cause trouble among the human noble factions. He feels he has no other choice. Richard's mother, the Madam, asks Mordred, "Please protect Richard for me." Finishing his memory, the knight Modred kneels and pledges his life to his cause. With grim determination, he vows that he will do his utmost to protect the young master, Richard. Back in the present, without a moment's hesitation, Modred leaps into the swirling vortex of dark energy to save his master. He plunges headfirst into the chaotic mass of shadow creatures that have surrounded Richard. Modred strikes down, attempting to cut through the shadows, but he is immediately met with overwhelming resistance as the dark energy consumes him. He grits his teeth, realizing the shadow energy is far too strong. Covered in wounds and blood, he screams that with his human body, it's impossible to break through the dark power. Watching the chaos unfold, one of the female assessors panics, shouting that an unidentified, intense anomaly has appeared and requests immediate backup. Another assessor replies with wide-eyed shock, announcing that the legendary mage has already gone to deal with the situation. As Modred is being overwhelmed by the shadows, a powerful voice commands everyone to move aside. A figure with flowing pink hair, the legendary mage Sue Helen, descends and unleashes a blindingly powerful blast of magic that cuts through the darkness. Sue Helen looks down at the scene, noting that Richard, the boy from the bloodline that Goton entrusted to her, is being targeted by shadow creatures. A silhouette of Richard, his eyes glowing with blue energy, is seen as Sue Helen declares him the chosen child. With a swift and powerful movement, Sue Helen strikes down one of the monstrous shadow creatures. Modred, witnessing her immense power, can only call out his young master's name. Sue Helen calmly stands amidst the dissipating shadows, confirming Richard's name and stating that he has passed the quality inspection. Modred recognizes the legendary mage. With a confident, knowing smile, Sue Helen declares that Richard is qualified to become her student. The scene transitions to a quiet night, with the moon shining over the towers of the Magic Academy. Richard is lost in a dream, a terrifying vision of being surrounded by an inferno. In his nightmare, he sees the silhouettes of two figures amidst the flames, and he desperately calls out for his mom. A vision of his mother, her back turned to him amidst the fire, calls his name. She turns to face him, reaching out as she calls his name one last time. Richard screams for his mom as he jolts awake in bed, finding himself in an unfamiliar room. A voice tells him that he is awake. Richard's eyes snap open, filled with confusion and alarm. He is confronted by an old man with a long white beard and a wizard's hat, who tells him not to be afraid. The old man introduces himself, explaining that Sue Helen, the legendary mage, asked him to look after Richard and to become his primary magic instructor in the future. Richard is completely baffled, scratching his head in confusion. He has no idea who Sue Helen is or what the old man is talking about. Lying back down, he notices a glowing orb floating beside his bed and wonders what his hand is doing near it. The instructor explains that an accident occurred a few hours ago while Richard was at the spring of assessment, and he has been treating and observing him since. Richard admits that he only remembers starting the test and has no memory of what happened after. The instructor advises him not to force it, reassuring him that everything is all right now. The scene opens with Richard, who has just regained consciousness, looking around in a daze. He seems to be searching for someone as he wonders where Mordred has gone. Meanwhile, the legendary mage Sue Helen analyzes the results of Richard's assessment. She notes that while he lacks elemental talent, his mental strength is excellent, a trait inherited from his mother. She muses that his abilities are balanced with no clear strengths or weaknesses, which makes her question why shadow creatures would target him. She concludes it must be because of his lineage from the Lacamond family. Turning to face Mordred, Sue Helen informs him that Richard's treatment is complete. She then cryptically asks if he knows the ultimate fate of a mortal body that resists shadow power. Mordred, with unwavering resolve, states that his duty is to protect young Master Richard, no matter the circumstances. A sly smile creeps across Sue Helen's face as she presses him further, asking if his duty extends to protecting Richard even at the cost of his own life. Looking down at him from above, Sue Helen seems surprised by his devotion. Having known him for so long, she didn't expect such loyalty from Mordred. Changing the subject, she coolly informs him that the bill for the testing and treatment comes to a grand total of 116,000 imperial gold coins. Mordred calmly asks her to put it on a tab for now. This enrages Sue Helen, who snaps back that she isn't running a charity. Mordred then reveals his true purpose. Lord Goton is willing to discuss the price she mentioned before. Instantly, Sue Helen's demeanor shifts. A greedy, excited grin spreads across her face as she muses to herself, surprised that they're actually willing to offer those terms for the child. Mordred explains the gravity of the situation. He reveals that the shadow power within Richard is dangerously eroding his life, and that keeping him by Sue Helen's side is the only method they can find to suppress it. Realizing she has the upper hand, Sue Helen, as a legendary mage with the unique ability to suppress shadow power, asks what chips they're willing to pay. She makes a steep demand, the revenue of one of Lord Goton's 2 planes. Mordred is taken aback by the term, plane time, clearly unfamiliar with what she is referring to. With a sparkle in her eye, Sue Helen corrects him, clarifying her demand, no, Norland time. Mordred argues that her conditions have already exceeded the bottom line instructed by Lord Goton. Unfazed, Sue Helen issues a veiled threat, stating that if her terms aren't met, she can't guarantee she'll be able to teach Richard how to resist the shadow power in the future. Mordred sighs, acknowledging her reputation as the money grubber, Sue Helen. He agrees to return and discuss the matter with the Lord Marquis but hopes she can offer a bit more value to ensure the deal goes through. Sue Helen pretends to concede, saying she can only take a step back. She then presents her revised offer. At the next prayer ceremony at the Eternal Dragon Temple, she will provide little Richard with some special assistance. She asks if that is acceptable. Mordred accepts her promise and says he will go back to seek the Duke's permission. As he departs, he formally leaves the young master in her care, to which she cheerfully responds, looking forward to his reply. The scene transitions, showing the exterior of a grand tower at night, where Richard is presumably staying. Inside, Richard is seen resting peacefully in a large bed. He begins to stir, slowly waking from his slumber with a pensive expression. His eyes snap open as fragments of a traumatic memory flash through his mind. He's remembering the chaotic scene from that time. A vision of a castle against a blood-red moon, a remnant of his nightmare, hangs in his memory. Sitting up in bed, he questions if the experience was the real world, as it felt both real and illusory. As he contemplates, a strange, glowing card covered in what appears to be binary code materializes in his hand. He rubs his eyes in disbelief, trying to make sense of the strange sight and wondering if he's just seeing things. But it's not an illusion. He lets out a sharp gasp as a blue, swirling light suddenly activates in his eye, bringing the strange phenomenon into focus. His shock turns to panic as he realizes the strange digital interfaces aren't just in front of him, but are appearing on the walls as well. He looks across the room, and the phenomenon is everywhere, even covering the chest and the weapons resting against the wall. Overwhelmed by the sensory overload, with binary code flooding his vision, he cries out in desperation, "What is happening to me?" The feeling intensifies, making him feel as though his entire world, his very perception, is shattering. He collapses to the floor, screaming, "Is it broken?" Trying to get a grip, Richard makes his way to a wash basin and stares at his reflection, his glowing blue eyes staring back from the water. He splashes the cold water on his face, the sensation grounding him as he tries to process the impossible situation. He tells himself to calm down, confirming that the vivid experience feels all too real. This is not a dream. As he catches his breath, he becomes aware of a clear, sharp sensation throughout his body, a new level of awareness. He flashes back to when he had his Einital awakening that he can feel that his body has improved significantly. He can see the scenery outside with greater detail and hear distant movements with perfect clarity. He realizes with a jolt that it's the same feeling he had back then. With his glowing eyes fixed forward, a new thought occurs to him. Perhaps these strange numbers hold some kind of meaning. He begins to focus on the data streams. Looking at a wall lamp and a coat rack, the numbers seem to correspond to concepts like size and quantity. He then shifts his gaze to the bedside table, and the data stream clarifies further, now presenting a query about its material. The content of the data is becoming clearer. Focusing on the sword and shield in the corner, the data resolves into specifics. He can see the material, length, and hardness of the iron sword, along with the material, diameter, and hardness of the wooden shield. He realizes in awe that he's seeing complete data. A look of stunned amazement is on Richard's face as he processes the incredible implications of his newfound sight. The realization hits him fully. His eye, now a complex web of data itself, has given him an extraordinary gift. He can see through to the very essence of objects. This new ability is revealed to be the power of truth. As Richard stands silhouetted against the moon, his world forever changed. But the sudden influx of information is too much. Richard cries out as an immense pressure overwhelms his mind, forcing him to his knees. He clutches his head in agony as the power triggers a painful flashback. He remembers that fateful time, and the terrible choice he was forced to make. The scene fades to the dark exterior of the castle spire, leaving Richard to grapple with his newfound power and the trauma it has unearthed. Sometime later, a knock is heard at the door of Richard's room. A voice calls out, "Student. Student Richard." Inside, Richard is seen lying exhausted on the floor after the ordeal with his new power. Lying on the floor, Richard hears the voice of his new teacher, Teacher Popovich, telling him that he can't be late, for today is the beginning of his magic study life. Now dressed in new clothes, Richard follows his teacher through the sunlit grounds of what appears to be a magic academy. He looks around, slightly confused. He sees other students in robes greeting their own teachers and heading towards a large building, prompting him to ask Teacher Popovich, "Aren't we going to the classroom?" Pointing towards the other students, Richard asks if their classroom is in the main building. Teacher Popovich explains that Richard is not yet old enough to attend class with them. Furthermore, as it is his first day, he will be receiving special, individualized instruction. Teacher Popovich then reveals that it was the legendary mage, Sue Helen, who personally instructed him to teach Richard properly. He gestures for Richard to follow him. Richard follows, but becomes confused when they stop at a small, ordinary-looking pavilion by the road. He questions if this could possibly be their classroom, to which Teacher Popovich simply lets out a knowing chuckle. With a gentle and mysterious smile, the old teacher simply advises his new student to be patient. "We will arrive soon," he says, as he touches his finger to a magical, glowing clock face that has materialized in the air, indicating the use of powerful spatial magic. Richard is left speechless, bathed in the golden light of the spell, completely amazed by the incredible display of magic happening right before his eyes. They step through the magical portal, arriving in what appears to be a magnificent, sprawling library. Richard's specialized, one-on-one magic education is about to begin. Following his new instructor, Richard is informed that they have arrived at their destination. Richard is left speechless, his eyes widening in shock as he takes in the sight of the grand, ornate hall before him. A figure in a wizard's hat and robe appears, welcoming Richard to the mirror classroom and introducing himself as the primary magic instructor. The instructor formally introduces himself as Teacher Popovich and declares that their first magic class is now officially beginning. The first lesson is on how to observe the magical world. Popovich begins by explaining the concept of a primal force, the foundation upon which everything is built. The lesson delves into cosmology, explaining that within the chaotic space of existence, many different plane worlds exist, each with its own set of laws. Popovich elaborates that these laws form the very framework of the entire world, and the plane where they stand, the continent of Norland, is a high-level plane. To demonstrate, Teacher Popovich conjures a flame in his hand, a physical manifestation of the magic within their world of Norland. He stands before a massive, intricate clock, explaining that for those who observe the world of magic with only their naked eyes, its existence is something to be taken for granted. Richard's eye is wide with a mix of concentration and wonder as he tries to absorb the profound concepts being explained to him. Popovich continues, stating that when one's consciousness reaches a higher perspective to observe the world, what one truly sees and hears is not real. Just like the mirror classroom they are in, the appearance of the world is merely a protection, a perception created within one's own consciousness. Richard is clearly overwhelmed, muttering the complex words to himself as he struggles to comprehend the mind-bending lesson on planes, laws, and the unreal nature of observation. Sensing his confusion, Popovich explains that the legendary mage herself insisted he teach Richard the truth without coddling him, as this profound knowledge is vital for his future. The lesson concludes with a homework assignment for the next 3 months. Richard must draw his own magic array composition, a critical first step in mastering the laws of their world. Richard is taken aback by the immensity of the task, stammering at the thought of having to create his very own magic array composition. But his shock quickly turns into resolve. Acknowledging his teacher, Richard becomes determined to create magic that truly belongs to him. 2 months later. Time has passed, and a powerful magical energy begins to swirl and take shape under the night sky. A hand moves with practiced grace, channeling the potent magical forces into a complex pattern. The spell is cast by Sue Helen, a powerful mage with distinctive pink hair, who is surrounded by the brilliant light of her magic. Figures bow in deference as they welcome the return of the legendary mage, Sue Helen. Her trip to collect debts had taken her nearly 2 months. Upon her return, Sue Helen is immediately briefed on an urgent commission regarding suspicious monster activity, but she wants to know if anything else of importance happened in her absence. She dismisses the low-paying commission and turns to Popovich, immediately asking for an update on Richard's progress. Popovich praises Richard's high comprehension skills, presenting scrolls to Sue Helen. She is shocked to see that he has already begun creating his own magic array composition, a task she thought would take him much longer. Popovich proudly declares that Richard did not disappoint her, explaining his unique talent. In just 2 months, his latest magic array is already incredibly stable, with an error margin of less than 0.01 centimeters from the masterpiece composition. Sue Helen looks at the magic array composition with a stern, analytical expression, processing the information Popovich just gave her about Richard's incredible progress. The other mages are in disbelief, questioning who could have drawn such a masterpiece. They speculate it must be a great mage of level 10 or higher, or perhaps a professional rune master, as the school currently has none. With a hint of pride, teacher Popovich informs the astonished crowd that their guesses are wrong. The composition came from the hands of a mere magic apprentice. The hall erupts in shock and disbelief. The mages can't believe that such a flawless work could have been created by a simple apprentice. Just as the debate intensifies, their attention is suddenly diverted by a massive commotion coming from the direction of the dormitory area. A spectacular explosion of magical energy, like a brilliant firework, lights up the night sky, originating from the dormitories. The bloom of magic is intensely powerful, confirming a significant magical event is taking place. Back in his room, amidst the swirling energy, Richard triumphantly shouts, "I succeeded, despite the rules against using magic in the dorms late at night." A crazed, triumphant grin spreads across his face. He reveals that after 2 months of training, he can finally use his ability to see through the essence of matter. He declares that by borrowing this unique ability, he has finally drawn the magic that belongs to him, punctuating his success with another burst of magical fireworks. Watching from afar, Sue Helen remarks on the very beautiful magic fireworks. Popovich confirms without a doubt that the fluctuation of energy is Richard's. Sue Helen is thoroughly impressed. She notes that Richard completed his 3-month assignment a month early and even created his own magic faster than most professionals. She concludes that the child is truly gifted. With his progress confirmed, Sue Helen's thoughts turn to a more serious matter. She asks Popovich about the status of Richard's dangerous shadow fluctuation during this period. Popovich, holding a glowing orb, reports that while he could feel the fluctuating aura of the shadow power, he could also sense Richard was working hard to actively suppress and control it. Understanding the situation, Sue Helen decides it is time for the next step in his development. It's time to let him go to his own school life. 7 months later. The scene shifts to a grand, towering structure, the Deep Blue Academy in Magic Tower City. It's the first day of the new semester, and a teacher urges the students to hurry. On the steps of the academy, students are seen rushing to class, anxious not to be late. A female teacher warns a student about having their credits deducted for being late. The student stops and says that teacher Popovich sent her. The teacher, who was one of the assessors from the entrance exam, turns and acknowledges the student, her expression shifting to one of recognition. Her eyes land on Richard, who is now walking calmly and appears more mature. She addresses him as Student Richard, confirming he is the one she is to meet. In a brief flashback, the teacher recalls seeing this same child at the spring of assessment more than half a year ago, noting how much taller he has grown since then. Popovich is giving Richard a tour of the academy grounds. He points out the front courtyard gate and informs Richard that he has already arranged his accommodation in the dormitory. Popovich then gestures towards a large building, identifying it as the teaching area where Richard will be attending his classes from now on. They arrive at a classroom. Popovich explains this is for Richard's first magic theory class and reassures him that being late is fine since he's a new student. Before leaving, Popovich shows some concern, telling Richard to let him know if he feels unaccustomed to anything, given the age gap between him and the other students. Richard, now looking more mature and self-assured, turns to his teacher with a calm smile. He reassures Popovich, telling him that it's okay and that he is more than capable of taking good care of himself. The scene opens in a grand hall, where students of a magic academy are gathered. A buzz of gossip fills the air as they discuss the imminent arrival of a new student, rumored to have an insane background and to be very young. The whispers continue, and one student reveals the most shocking rumor of all: the new kid is supposedly the legendary mage's newest student. Peipan, a student with an eye patch, listens to this with a look of stern disbelief. A teacher, wearing a large witch's hat, calls for order, telling the students to quiet down as they are delaying class. She announces that today, a new student will be joining them, sparking a fresh wave of excitement. The teacher formally introduces the new student, a boy with striking white hair. "This is student Richard," she proclaims to the class. A close-up shows Richard's face. He has sharp, turquoise-colored eyes and a calm, composed expression as the teacher announces that he will be studying with them from now on. One of the students, a girl with pink hair, notes that while Richard isn't a small child, he definitely looks younger than the rest of them. She eagerly asks the teacher if the rumor about him being the legendary mage's student is true. The entire class erupts in a wave of shock and disbelief. The idea that this young kid could be the student of the legendary mage seems impossible to them. The students begin to question Richard's qualifications, wondering what makes him so special when countless other powerful, accomplished mages have failed to gain an apprenticeship. The teacher once again has to shout for them to be quiet. The teacher appears flustered by the class's outburst, turning to try and address the rampant speculation. However, before the teacher can speak, Richard addresses the class himself, his voice cutting through the noise. He states clearly that he has never met the legendary mage they speak of. Richard cleverly clarifies his position. He states that he is just another student here to learn magic, and that his current mentor is Teacher Popovich. He formally introduces himself as Richard. With a confident, almost mischievous smile, Richard concludes his introduction by saying he looks forward to learning from everyone. Richard's explanation leaves the other students confused. They conclude it must have all been a misunderstanding, wondering how such a young kid could have become the legendary mage's student anyway. Peipan, the student with the eye patch, looks particularly annoyed by the whole affair. He grumbles and tells everyone to stop fooling around and pay attention to class. The school bells ring, signaling the end of the day. As the school day ends, students rush out, excited to play a match of magic ball. They make plans to meet at the exercise district, leaving Richard behind in the now empty hallway. Richard reflects on his first day of classes, thinking to himself that it's been a whole day of studying things he already learned in the mirror classroom. With an intense and bored expression, he concludes that the theories and spells were far too basic and uninteresting for him. The scene flashes back. Teacher Popovich informs Richard that he will officially integrate into campus life the following week. Richard questions this, reminding Popovich that his current magical knowledge already far exceeds the scope of ordinary student learning. Popovich acknowledges this fact but explains that Richard's talent is so great that he was already capable of handling the General Magic Academy curriculum 7 months ago. He was kept in the mirror classroom only because his young age and physical immaturity were a concern. Richard asks to just stay where he is, but Popovich refuses. He explains that letting him return to campus life is a decision agreed upon by both himself and the legendary mage, as it will be beneficial for Richard's body and mind. Richard looks frustrated, complaining that everything is decided by this legendary mage whom he has never even seen. He questions whether she can truly be called his mentor. Popovich gently places a hand on Richard's shoulder, reassuringly telling him, of course. He says that Richard should be rejoicing to become her student and that he must trust her. With a knowing smile, Popovich assures Richard that all these arrangements are for his own good. He leans in, adding with finality that everything is within the legendary mage's grasp. Returning to the present, Richard walks through the halls, pondering Popovich's words. He questions what he can truly learn this way and resolves to find his own knowledge in the library. His thoughts are abruptly shattered by an angry shout from behind, "Hey!" Richard turns to face his aggressor, his expression calm and his eyes sharp. It's Peipan, his face twisted with rage. He lunges forward, throwing a punch while yelling, "You liar!" Richard, unfazed, effortlessly dodges the attack. From a balcony above, other students spot the commotion. One points down, shouting, "A fight!" Richard's swift dodge sends Peipan stumbling forward, losing his balance completely from the force of his own missed punch. Peipan gets back on his feet, absolutely furious. He cracks his knuckles and yells at Richard, "You little brat! Who do you think you are, spouting lies over there?" Ironically, Peipan himself declares what Richard denied, shouting that this is the new student of the legendary mage, revealing his deep-seated jealousy. The two female students who were gossiping earlier watch from a distance. They recognize Richard and realize that he's about to be in big trouble. The girls discuss the situation, revealing that Peipan is a talented level 2 mage who has always held a grudge because he could never become the legendary mage's student. He had conspired to ostracize Richard, but Richard's public denial of the rumor thwarted his plan, leaving him flustered and angry. Peipan confronts Richard again, acknowledging his skill in dodging. He angrily questions why Richard won't admit to his status as the legendary mage's student. Meanwhile, two figures watch from the balcony. One of them, a woman named Minnie, asks her companion, "Is this your doing, Randolph?" She accuses him of telling the new lackey, level 2 mage Peipan, about Richard. Randolph denies that the self-important Peipan is his lackey. He admits that he just wanted to borrow Peipan's ego to test how much the new kid, Richard, weighs. Minnie warns Randolph not to play with fire. She reminds him that if Richard gets into any danger, even Randolph, who is also a student of the legendary mage, will be severely punished. Randolph, however, smirks, completely unconcerned. Back in the hall, Peipan grabs Richard by the collar, screaming in his face. "Kid! Are you scared? Answer me," he yells, calling Richard a weakling and a cowering turtle. The scene cuts to black, with white text indicating a flashback, 7 months ago. The flashback begins, showing Richard's hands, wrapped in bandages, as he strikes a wooden training dummy. He's exhausted. A younger Richard complains to teacher Popovich, wondering why they are doing physical training instead of learning magic. Popovich explains that to be a great mage, one needs a strong body as a container for powerful magic. He reminds Richard of his desire to become stronger to protect others and declares that for the next half year, he must undergo a devil's training. His resolve hardened by Popovich's words, Richard's eyes burn with determination as he sweats, shouting a firm yes. The grueling training begins. Popovich has Richard focus on strength, forcing him to lift heavy sacks with his body and magic. The training also includes wisdom, showing Richard collapsed on the floor, surrounded by books, a sword, and other training tools after intense study. And finally, physique. A montage shows Richard relentlessly practicing his combat skills, punching and kicking with incredible force and speed. The flashback ends, returning to the present. The result of that training is coexistence. Richard effortlessly catches Peipan's hand, stopping his assault. Peipan looks on in complete shock. With a cold, downward glance, Richard easily overpowers Peipan, who can only let out a pained grunt. A look of pure shock and disbelief fills Peipan's eyes as he realizes the immense power difference between them. In a swift and powerful motion, Richard lands a devastating kick, sending Peipan flying backwards across the hall. The two female students watching from the sidelines are left completely speechless, their mouths agape in astonishment, unable to comprehend the sudden and overwhelming display of power. Even Randolph, who had been watching from the balcony with a confident smirk, is now sweating and speechless at this unexpected turn of events. Richard stands tall, an aura of power emanating from him. He looks down on his defeated opponent and throws his own insult back at him, declaring, "You are the weakling." Peipan lies sprawled on the floor, completely defeated by the physical confrontation. His friends rush to his side, worriedly asking if he is okay. But Peipan is far from finished. Utterly humiliated and enraged, he lets out a furious scream. Pushing himself up, Peipan begins to channel his magical energy, gathering a ball of intense fire in the palm of his hand. Screaming "Brat," he unleashes his magic, launching a powerful fireball spell directly at Richard. He proudly declares his status as a level 2 mage, certain that his magic cannot be defeated. In response, Richard simply raises his hand, calmly preparing a counterspell. His expression is hidden in shadow, showing no sign of fear or strain. Richard unleashes his own magic. A massive, swirling vortex of fire, a powerful firestorm, erupts from his hand, completely dwarfing and consuming Peipan's fireball with ease. From high above, Teacher Popovich watches the battle unfold. With a satisfied expression, he says, "Indeed," confirming that this overwhelming display of power is exactly what he anticipated from his prodigious student. As the massive firestorm rages, one of the onlookers screams out the unbelievable truth of the situation: Richard has just cast level 3 magic, proving he is in a completely different league from the level 2 Peipan.